Hi there, this is Christine from the Door Doctor, and today we're going to make what I think is a pretty quick and easy but impactful yellow sunflower wreath. And we're going to do it with one kind of petal for both the flower petals and the leaves. So once you master the petal, then the rest of it should be pretty simple. So we're going to break this into several parts. Part one is going to be supplies. Part two is just going to be making the petal and putting on the first row. And then part three will just be the finishing details of the wreath. So for supplies, we're going to be using all poly burlap mesh for this flower. You know I love poly burlap mesh because I think it's fairly weather resistant and it's got a nice texture to it. So I think it's a little bit more durable than some other types of mesh. And I usually cut this with my my wood burner here with a little chiseled tip. And that helps seal the edges of the mesh. So we're going to be using 3 different types of poly burlap mesh. One is this yellow and white window pane mesh. So you can see it's got 2 colors running through there. And we're going to be alternating the rows of petals with a solid yellow poly burlap mesh. And then for the leaves, we're going to be using olive green. And I'm going to be putting all of this on a 12-inch diameter wire wreath frame that I got from Michael's. And this one has 6 different sections with 4 different rows of wire. And we're going to be primarily applying petals to this second row on the wire wreath frame. And then I've added my number 5 plastic mesh, which can be bought in sheets from Hobby Lobby. And I've already applied a circle of that in the center so that you can apply petals there as well. And then to apply all of our petals, you know I love my zip ties. I use 8-inch length zip ties, but certainly you can use any length that works well with your fingers. I've just through trial and error like using 8-inch long ones. I buy these in bulk on Amazon.com. And then for the flower center, we're going to be using this styrofoam sort of moss covered flower center. This one's 7 inches in diameter and was purchased at craftoutlet.com. And usually it comes with nothing on the back. It's just the styrofoam backing. And I usually thread a little pipe cleaner through a piece of plastic mesh, glue that on the back, and then I add an extra piece of felt glued on the back just to give it a little extra strength there. So that's going to be the center of our flower. So first, let me move all of this out of the way, and we'll just talk a few more moments about mesh. So these mesh squares have already been pre-cut. I usually like to use my wood burner. These are 10-inch wide roll or 10-inch in width rolls of poly burlap mesh that I cut into 10 by 10-inch squares. And so in terms of quantity, you're going to need 6 of the petals 6 of the green for the leaves. For the solid yellow, you're going to need 20 of the 10 by 10-inch yellow squares, and that'll take up about 2/3 of a roll of the yellow poly burlap. And you'll need slightly more for the window pane. So for this, you'll need 24 10 by 10-inch squares. But you should also be able to get by with using 1 full roll. You won't use the whole roll, but 1 roll of the window pane mesh. And then once this is all on our frame, the finished dimension, it's a nice full wreath. It's about 24 to 25 inches in diameter, including the leaves. All right, so I am going to just clean this up a little bit and we'll come back and start making some petals. All right, so welcome back. So we're going to start with row 1 of this flower. And like I mentioned before, we're not going to use the outermost edge. We're going to use this second row for the first row of petals. And we're going to use the window pane mesh for that first row. The leaves we're going to add on the back at the end. So row 1 will be the window pane mesh, and then working your way in, you're going to do a row of solid yellow, then 1 more of window pane, and then you're going to finish the center with a 4th row of solid yellow mesh. And for this petal, this is pretty easy. I think it shouldn't take too long to show you, but let me put my zip tie in here first. Just position that there. You're going to take your square of window pane mesh, and I usually like to start with the seamed edge, which for this mesh is the white rows there, as opposed to these vertical yellow rows. You're going to have the seamed edge towards you, cut edges on the side, and you're just going to make a triangle. So I'll take this lower left-hand corner and bring it up to the upper right-hand corner, and just nice flatten that into a good even triangle. And then you're going to gather this right up the middle, from the base of the triangle to the point. All right, like that. Almost looks like a little, I don't know, mustache. And then you're going to swoop the two sides in and pinch it in the middle. And I always think that this looks like a mermaid tail or a fish tail. And that's your petal. Easy breezy. We'll just put that here. And because this wire wreath frame has 6 sections, we're going to put 2 of these petals per section. So a total of 12 petals in the outer row. And I think I'm going to work clockwise here because I'm going to want this solid white edge to be sort of dominant, to kind of overlay each petal next to it and cover this this yellow seam here. So let's do a second petal. So again, we're going to have our seamed edge here facing your body, and the cut edge is on the side. You're going to take the lower left-hand corner, go up to the upper right, flatten your triangle, then gather up the middle, pinch it, swoop in those sides, and then pinch again right along the top there. I like this petal. It's simple to do, but it also gives sort of a sunburst effect. And I like anything that's quick and impactful, and that is this petal. All right, let's do a third one here. We'll start by making our triangle, flatten that, and then gather up the middle. And this is going to be the petal that you use for the entirety of this flower. So there we go. Just give you another shot of that. Quick, easy breezy. And you can see that the spacing is such that they're kind of gently overlapping each other. All right, we'll do one more together, and then I think I'll break away to finish the row, so you don't have to hear me drone on about making the same triangle over and over again. Gather up the middle. I use the same petal on my poinsettia wreaths. I use this same petal. I have a turquoise blue and a mint green wreath with a starfish in the middle. That looks really pretty. You can make a pretty full wreath with this petal if you place them close. Place each row pretty close to one another. It almost makes, as you pull the center rows in, it makes it flare upward. It makes a much fuller wreath. All right, we'll just do this last one. So pinch it in the middle, swoop the sides together, pinch it again between your thumb and your forefinger, middle finger and your forefinger. Oops, my zip tie has failed. I find every so often I get a package of zip ties where they just don't have, maybe I just don't know my own strength, but they don't seem to hold up as well. We'll try that again. All right. So I would say continue on, 12 petals in total around this second wire, and then we'll come back and do a row of the solid yellow. Right, welcome back. So for row 2, you can see row 1 has been finished. So we have 12 petals going around that second wire. And row 2 is going to be repeat of row 1, only using the solid yellow poly burlap mesh, same petal style. And this time, I think I'm going to walk it in and place each row so that it alternates in between sort of the tips of these outer petals, and it's going to rim the edge of the plastic mesh. So we're going to place our zip ties right along this border here, okay? But again, same petal. Let's see. I think I'll start here. Put that right in the middle, sort of right in between these two petals from the outer edge. And again, I start to make my petal with my seamed edges facing towards me. Grab the lower left-hand corner, bring it up to the opposite upper right-hand corner, flatten your triangle, and then gather from the base of the triangle to the point. This mesh is a little bit easier to work with than the window pane mesh. But I like the window pane mesh because it breaks up, you know, the solid yellow, just gives it a little bit more texture. They have window pane mesh in solid colors too, so you could do all yellow instead of the yellow and the white. That would look lovely. I've done that with fuchsia before, where I've done solid fuchsia alternating with window pane fuchsia, and it's really quite pretty. All right, second triangle. So this second row is also going to be 12 petals. They're just going to be slightly closer to one another because you're working your way in on the circle. Number 2. We'll place number 3 here. And all my poly burlap squares, as usual, I pre-cut them, and just to give them a little bit extra strength on the cut seams, I usually take a little craft paintbrush and dot the edges with some matte Mod Podge and let them dry. It's an extra step, you know, they have to all dry, and you have to be careful not to put too much glue on the tips. But I feel like it just makes them a little less likely to fray. And it's a step worth doing because it can give you, I think, a slightly more durable wreath. And I think the mesh is a little easier to work with. You know, it doesn't fall apart quite so easily in my hands, especially for petals where you're doing a lot of manipulation of the mesh. So there's our petal again. All right, so that's 4 petals down. So again, 12 total for this row. And so I'm going to take a break, come back, row 3. All right, so row 2 is done, and this is our progress so far. I'm going to show you the back side there too. So you can see our second row, sort of alternating in between row 1. And now on to row 3. I'm going to be back to the window pane mesh. And for this row, we'll place the zip ties just a little bit, I would say right in between the tips of these petals. If you want to call this like the head of the petal. So right in between the head of the petal is where we'll put our next zip tie. And so for this row, it's going to be another 12 petals. I'm going to put that zip tie right there. And so we'll do another 12 of the window pane mesh for a total of 24 pieces of the window pane. And again, same petal technique. So you're going to make your triangle, gather from the base to the point, pinch it, swoop in the sides, pinch it again, and then zip tie it. Simple, simple, repetitive, repetitive. But I kind of think that the most impactful wreaths are the ones that aren't that fussy, you know? They don't have 10 million different types of petals. Just simple and easy. All right, petal number 2. All right, so again, I'm not going to bore you with showing you every single petal of every single row. That's how we're looking so far. So continue on placing your next 12 window pane petals in between the heads of the solid row behind it, and we'll come back to do row 4 and apply our leaves. All right, third row is done, and it's looking pretty. I'll flip this around so you can see the placement of the third row, which is about, I don't know, barely an inch in from the second row. Let's say maybe 3/4 to an inch. And now we're going to do row 4, which is solid yellow. You're going to use 8 petals total, and keep in mind you're going to have this fairly large flower center in the middle, and quite honestly, you could probably get away with just the 3 rows, but I like finishing with the solid yellow, so we're going to do one more row. It's going to come in slightly from this last row, and again, I think I would place them, you know, just past the head of these petals here. So I'm going to place my first zip tie, yeah, about an inch or so in front of the last one, right there. And if you know me, I like to make sure these rows are pretty evenly spaced. So there's going to be 8 petals total. I'm going to place the first 4 in a what I call north, south, east, west configuration so that they're pretty symmetric. And then I'll fill in the spaces, you know, I'll fill in northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest, if that makes sense, with the final 4 petals. So this is going to be my north. We'll flip this around, pick a spot almost exactly across from it to do south. Make my petal here. Hopefully you've gotten the technique down at this point for the petal. Here's number 2. So north, south, and we'll do east and west. That guy right there. I have a tendency to always pick even numbers for my rows of petals, and I have a tendency to break things into quadrants when I place the petals. Just a habit. I like knowing everything looks balanced, but flowers are not balanced in that way. I don't know. Just a nasty habit of mine. All right. This is number 4. Gather from the base to the tip. Swoop that in, pinch it, and place it. So the first 4 petals are done. Cut these zip ties off. And then we'll add in 4 more in the different spaces in between. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that'll be it for the petals. And then the leaves are pretty easy. Like I said, same petal technique, only placed on the back as leaves. And then it's just finishing touches. right, number 5. When you do add the petals this way, you do have to kind of tuck in the cut edges. Remember to tuck the cut edges of one petal under the seamed edge of the petal next to it. All right, almost done. And like I said, this is for finished size. This is about 24, 25 inches in diameter, depending on the placement of your leaves. Sometimes I'll use an 8-inch wreath frame, and that'll give you closer to a 20, 21-inch flower dimension, which is a little smaller. If you're selling them, they ship nicely in a 20 by 20-inch box, though. Let's see. So if that matters to you, you might consider downsizing or offering a couple different sizes. All right, this is number 7. Tuck in that cut edge, and then we'll do number 8, and then the body of the flower will be all done. Let's see. There we go. And so like I said, 24 window pane mesh squares and 20 of the solid yellow. And then we'll end up adding 6 leaves on the back. All right, and that's going to be that, you know, pretty fast. All right, let me just cut these last zip ties and show you how it looks. Let's see. Oops, if I could get my scissors to work. All right, so here we go. It's hard to get this all on screen because it's so large, but that's the placement of your 8. There again is the placement of your 4 rows. So row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4. We're going to now put on leaves. We'll do it all in this segment. I usually use these crossbars as a marker for where I'm going to place the leaves. And so you're going to do 6. And usually I like to snake the zip tie in, kind of weave it through the frame, sort of like that. And then when I place the leaf, I'm going to sort of tuck it underneath the frame here as I tighten the zip tie. I'll show you. So I have my zip tie placed. I'm going to take my triangle just like I would for a petal. I'm going to make the same triangle shape. I'm going to gather it from the base to the tip just like before. The only difference is I'm going to place it just like this without pinching it again. So I'm going to place it, I always say it looks like a mustache. I don't know why, like a handlebar mustache. So I'm going to place it and tighten the zip tie so that it sort of sits open. Let me give it another little twist. And I'll show it to you closer. Bring that closer. It kind of sits under the wire frame, but I haven't pinched it at the tip the way I would a petal. And then you can kind of, you know, maneuver it so that you can see it from the other side. And I'm just going to work around and place another zip tie at each of the crossbars, or near each of the crossbars for my petals. For my leaves. Pardon me. All right, so here's another leaf. We'll gather it up. Don't pinch it at the head. Align it with your zip tie, and I kind of tuck a bit of it under the wire frame before I tighten my zip tie. All right, and that is going to be it. So I'm going to finish these final 4 leaves, and then usually I save the flower center for this one to the end, just because it's this fairly fragile styrofoam piece. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in the last segment and about finishing your wreath. So I'll be right back. So welcome back. So for the final portion we're going to just do some finishing touches on the wreath. So here's the front of the wreath. I'll give you another glimpse of all the leaves on the back, all 6. And now we're just going to apply our styrofoam center. I get this at craftoutlet.com. You could use a range of different flower wreath centers. I think would look lovely here. These come in different colors. Orange, I think there's yellow, brown, different sizes. And I've already attached a pipe cleaner on the back. And you're just going to twist that tightly so that it doesn't move at all. And then tuck in your ends. Really simple. You just got to be gentle with it because it has this sort of mossy covering to the front, and it can kind of, you know, little pieces of it can come off. I usually like to spray it a little bit with a matte sealant. I usually use this Rust-Oleum clear sealant on the petals as well. It just keeps them from fading quite so fast. All right. And then once you have this attached the way you like it, I usually like to add a pipe cleaner for a hanger, and this is pretty easy. I just usually bend it into a little letter Y. You can see here. Not a letter Y, sorry, a letter W. Boy, I'm forgetting my alphabet. And then I just slip that in under the wire frame and give it a couple of little twists around here. And just make sure that you attach it pretty firmly to the frame so that it doesn't move too much. I usually loop it around a couple of the different wires. I'll give you a closer shot of that in a second. Give you a little close-up of that. And then I like to add, this has got some of the brown wreath center on it, but I like to add a little piece of felt on the back. I attach it with zip ties just so that you can cover the frame and you don't scratch your door. I usually just use some pinking shears around the edge of this just to make it nice and neat. And I have a little hole punch that just gives me little holes in my felt so I can add my zip ties. I'll just go around here. And this is a nice, simple, I think pretty quick mesh wreath, you know. Technique-wise, it's pretty easy to learn. I love the colors. I think the colors can be used year-round, but obviously you do you, whatever you prefer. I'm thinking about making one of these for the holidays with some more holiday colors. Let's see. I think I missed one of the little hole punch holes somewhere in here. Add one here. Couple more. Almost done. Just go around and tighten all of those. And then I just usually trim the edges of all my zip ties and tuck in each tip. And yes, I use my scissors. I do have all sorts of cutting tools for plastic and wire. I just love my scissors. I can't seem to change the habit. All right. So I'm just going to go around here, tuck in all my little zip ties. Just like that. And then I'll turn it around for one more show and tell. There you go. Let's try to get that in view there. Well, I hope you like this video. If you like this sunflower and want to check out some of my other offerings, please hit subscribe. That way you can see all of my new videos as soon as they come out. Have a good day. Bye.